One of the things, the memes, the statements I've heard all my life, commentaries, is that society is not based on a spiritual identity. That is, a scientific society or a society based on rationality and reason, according to the post-enlightenment version of that, are inherently more successful societies. They're better societies. They produce a better quality of life for the citizens, and they're managed and they run much better. Well, how much truth is there to this? Let's talk about this. If you look at, that's the whole thing, that like a society run by, say, mystics or priests or druids or this kind of idea, you're immediately made to believe that they were completely failures of societies. You're told that they were always stagnant, and this is why they died out. Well, how can you call ancient Egypt a society that was saturated in magic and spirituality? In fact, it was a spiritual and magical system that just also happened to be a society. And what about ancient Babylon? The technological achievements of ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon were incredible. We still don't know how they built half the things they did. Likewise, the great stone structures were built by spiritual and magical society, cultures. And then we have pagan ancient Rome and pagan ancient Greece, and they were colossus of technology and learning and science and philosophy and art and culture, engineering, and yet they were societies rooted in spiritual and magical ideas. In fact, the Greeks especially, everything had a magical or mystical identity to it, and so did the Romans as well. So to suggest those societies are stagnant is really not fair. Now let's look at the other side of the card, societies built on science and reason. Well, the first one of them was France in the post-revolutionary period, and that was an absolute bloodbath. And they didn't only kill all the aristocrats, which wouldn't have been so bad, but they also killed vast numbers of Catholics for no reason. And it was such a failure to actually create this completely secular society, that they installed a goddess of reason inside a statue now, of reason, inside the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Its first great invention was the guillotine. Let's talk about the Soviet Union. A bloodbath, purges, this whole idea of scientific extermination of vast numbers of individuals who don't fit in with the reason process. We have the same in China, particularly during Mao's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. Vast numbers of people murdered because they didn't fit the system, the atheistic reason system of reason, and likewise Kampuchea under Pol Pot. And so this automatically, just on the surface level, the idea that a reasoned society is a better society falls down. Now, in the modern context, people would point to, well, what about Scandinavia? Well, Scandinavia on the surface may seem like a wonderful place, but when you actually go, it's all misty-eyed and lovely to people who don't live there. When you go there, they're very dour, unhappy cultures. This whole nonsense about they're the happiest nations on earth is just garbage. The reason why they are is because the prescription of psychotropic medications is off the scale. And I often wonder who conducts these surveys, because I can tell you that the people in Britain and Ireland are far more happier on the surface and also in below than you ever encounter in Scandinavia. I mean, you can sit in a restaurant in Sweden and you'll have two couples there going out to dinner, and for the whole night they'll be eating their food, not making contact. I've seen it with my own eyes. You go into supermarkets in Denmark and people are terrified of making eye contact with you, in case they have to actually acknowledge your humanity. And these are the best societies in the world, and they tell us, and they're not. They may be more efficient and better managed in terms of like a socialistic idea of the management of society, but they're certainly not happy societies. They're certainly not meaningful. They don't produce a lot of culture or art anymore, and not since they went fully socialist. In fact, when they do, it's usually wild rebellions against that, such as death metal. In fact, I often think that the reason why the Muslims are going crazy in Sweden and causing all this trouble is almost like it's kind of create a psychic balance to try and bring them back to the center again. Now, at the other side, a society based on religion is usually awful. So, again, when I talk about spirituality, I know a lot of you scientific and atheists, like, vanguard types, don't really understand that being a spiritual is a very different thing than being religious. Religious follows a dogma, and being monotheistic is extremely different than being polytheistic. It's much more healthier and relaxed being polytheistic. You don't have one true God. You don't have one true law, one true this and one true that, or one only this or one only book. So the idea that a society based on spirituality and magic being backward and stagnant is certainly not true. All you have to do is look at the monuments along the Nile Valley, the Colosseum in Rome, the Pantheon, the Parthenon in Athens. These are all built for magical and special reasons. So that's nonsense to begin with. And these societies made rapid progress in very short times. This idea that a reasoned society, a completely sort of atheistic society, is the best of all, well, that's totally not true. All you have, they result in brutality, totalitarianism, and genocide. The middle ground is a secular society where the government, well, again, we're coming back to a spiritual anarchy here, where a secular government that only has an administrative function, and then a society has no spiritual identity other than what they naturally drift towards. I guarantee you, if there were no religions, everyone would drift back to paganism, because you can see your gods; they're in nature. And pagans have a healthier relationship. When they talk about beings, they're not talking about actual beings that exist. They're talking about archetypes that encapsulate forces of nature and forces of the universe, both seen and unseen. Very healthy way to be. It puts you in a state of almost poetic thinking. Rather than a constant reasoned thinking, a constant robotic thinking. It's actually the antidote to transhumanism. So my final statement would be that societies built on ideas of magic, mysticism, polytheism, with no Abrahamic dogmatic type government is probably the best way to go. Once is not forced, it's all through a secular government. And secondly, that the worst kind of government of all is one based on science, rationality and reason. That just dehumanizes people down to units that the bean counters can quickly destroy just because they don't fit in with some 5-year plan. So there we go. It's feckin' freezing here, and apparently we're supposed to be in the middle of global warming. It's incredibly cold for Ireland, and where's this great heat and sunshine, all the great reason and rational minds promised us? And don't give me this thing that it's global weirding or this is cold is caused by global warming. I don't believe it. That's gaslighting.